And this is why you shouldn't always greet swift casting for damage, Kai. You know this. Oh dear. Welcome back to the Mentor Roulette grind. This time, we're trying some more with Summoner's DPS, and I'm not joking when I say throughout this session, I did consider going something like Black Mage as well. With that said, this session started on release of this season's Mogtome event, so I was expecting to land in a lot of Mogtome relevant zones. This barely happened at all, actually. That said, we had quite a strange mix of duties this time around, with no MSQ roulette though, thankfully. For duty 1, we have the very interesting Guildhest basic training enemy parties, and genuinely, nothing of note happens here as you can see. For duty 2, we go to Sunken Temple of Qarn, and it seems the tank not only knew me, but was surprised to meet me here of all places. We start by skipping this pack right at the beginning, which is a classic trick for this dungeon. Given everyone skipped it, I sort of assumed we all knew the tricks of the duty, which turned out to not entirely be the case. I let the tank know to make sure to tank mobs all on one side of them so that they're better clumped together for my damage. The tank then picks up the item here, which, since no other items are picked up throughout the duty, turns out to be unnecessary. Meanwhile, the Dragoon disconnects, causing us all to worry about whether the ongoing issues at the time were still happening. We press on, and land in this awkward position where the tank dies to the overwhelming power of bees, I guess? And I then have to spring into action with the power of running away, which seems to work well. As we progress onward, we also spend a small amount of time on dealing with these heads, which, if you simply run past them, will eventually give up the chase normally. The Dragoon returns to us just before the second boss, and as we continue onward, we reach the scales at the end, which really confused the tank as they thought you had to put something on the scales. Not so, just tip them anyway. Overall, I would still call this a very successful dungeon run. For duty 3, we went to Swallow's Compass, and it turns out this is a 3 mentors 1 sprout kind of group. As we passed the first boss, the tank noticed that the healer didn't seem to be attacking at all, and as they brought it up, I start to notice too. I offered to give them some advice, and the tank even halted to give space to talk. I explained to the healer that attacking could help, and also highlighted that our warrior probably can help with the healing, which our tank also seconded. For the rest of the dungeon, the healer did try to fit in some attacks, which went just fine. Now, some of you may be looking at these AoE pulls and go, "Where's gravity?" And to that I say, baby steps everyone. Before, our healer was not attacking, now they are attacking. That's infinitely better. Next time, they can learn about AoE. Aside from this, the duty went perfectly fine. For duty 4, I was a 10-minute replacement in Vanaspati, which, come to think of it, felt a bit strange considering we were still on the packs leading up to the second boss. But I suppose this dungeon does have a lot of forced stops and starts, and who knows how long they had to progress with one less DPS. That said, the run went well. We even managed to quick spawn the last pack here before the final boss because the group properly focused one of the chunky boys here. Now, on the final boss, it seemed both the ninja and the healer didn't quite get how to interpret the warning on the screen, but only the first time. After that, it seems they got it. In the second half of the fight, the healer died, and given I had already spent my swift cast on something else, I decided to hardcast the race. Better play it safe. Also, this is a sort of foreshadowing, you could say. Aside from this, the duty went very well with no major hiccups. For duty 5, we went to Aetherfont. I guess we had some expert roulettes here. Regardless, the run went just about as expected, although I am used to every boss dying just a bit faster than what we had here. What I mean by that is, on the first boss, it usually dies before this mechanic starts resolving for real. On the second boss, I feel like this stack marker is rare, or is that just me? And on the last boss, the second telekinesis usually never comes up at all. As I said, just long enough that I noticed. Kinda strange. Beyond this, the duty went just fine, of course. For duty 6, we have a super spoilery duty, so unless you have completed the leveling story of Endwalker, you may want to jump to this timestamp here. Now, with that out of the way, the duty was the final day with the End Singer. Since the Ice Metal Sync got reined in, I feel this fight has gotten a lot more interesting. With 3 first-timers, I am a bit surprised we didn't have more deaths than we did. Not that I expected a wipe or anything. With that said, this fight is, these days, always a spectacle. Just dangerous enough that she can absolutely wipe you if you let her, but easy enough that the excitement of the fight isn't halted by a wipe. I mean, beyond the wipe. The first time I did this duty, I did it as Scholar, and I remember it felt like I had exactly the amount of cooldowns necessary to reply to every action she did, which really made it feel like we were holding on for the last push. This is almost always how this fight feels to me now, after the Ice Metal nerf. Just an excellent finale, or almost finale I suppose. For duty 7, we're back in that enemy parties Guildhest again. However, weirdly, this time our tank seemed to not quite realize that AoE would be a good idea until we had like 2 mobs left. Not that it really caused any issues, we still finished the duty quickly. It is funny though, because only the tank would have AoE at this level. For duty 8, we went to Cutter's Cry, and I think both the healer and the monk were first timers. Cutter's Cry being an optional dungeon makes this pretty common. Despite that observation, it seemed like the tank pulled as hard as they could, which didn't really cause any problems. Although, I suppose it could have been nice to explain to the first-timers how we go about skipping to the second boss before just going for it. On the plus side, as long as enough players make to the boss room that they can hold on till the rest get put in the arena, it doesn't matter how many died on the way there. I do think it might be a good idea if the dungeon was updated to not just let you skip past though. It feels really awkward. On the final boss was when the troubles really started, as it seems the healer didn't really get the Dragon's Voice Ram's Voice mechanic, leading to their death. Just as I had spent Swiftcast for free damage. Using Swiftcast to sneak in an extra ruin just before Ether Charge ends is a cool 50 potency for free. Although, hard casting Raise is a cool 3 ruin casts lost. And you know what's an even bigger damage loss than that? Getting interrupted. And you know what's an even bigger damage loss than that? Dying. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why you don't greed too hard with Swiftcast, especially if the healer is a bit shaky. Anyway, it turned out at the end that the tank knew me, and joke's on you, Yusaros. You think it's bad to put mistakes in a video? Not so. In fact, if the streamer man dies, that's comedy. And you know what's even more comedy? When the streamer man dies to his own greed and overzealousness. Of course I'm going to include that. For duty 9, we land in P2N, Asphodelos, the second circle, against the Hippocampus. It seems we at least have one first-timer, but also several mentors. Before we went for it, I checked with the other summoner if they would see Ring Light first. That way, we had a raid buff for every minute's burst, which turned out to be exactly what happened. Beyond this, nothing particularly special happens throughout the duty, no deaths, and we promptly killed the boss in short order. I suppose the thing of note is that normally this boss has a tendency to get some sneaky kills or first-timers or surprises. So I guess the thing of note is that no one died. For duty 10, we went back to Swallow's Compass again, and with the same tank from earlier, although this time they were playing Paladin. This run, there was very little to talk about, and we simply rushed through the duty with no issues or things that stood out. For duty 11, more Guildhest! Yay! Under the armor! Yay! You know where this is going. Possibly the fastest Guildhest in my opinion. Also, it seems the tank knew me. Hello! For duty 12, we go to O4N, or Deltascape V4.0. This was a bit surprising, since it was the first Mock-Tome relevant duty I had all day, and conveniently, it was in my weekly challenge. 22 Mock-Tomes right down in my pocket. Now, something really interesting happens right at the start here. The boss puts doom on 2 players, and one healer is shown as themselves, and the other healer doesn't do anything, leading to the dancer's death. The really interesting thing is that the dancer, not knowing what went wrong, took the blame themselves and apologized. This prompted me to explain what actually went wrong in brief, and this prompted the healer that didn't cast Ashuna at all to step up, and they took the blame. Technically, either healer could have used Ashuna on the dancer. I want to note that the thing I find very nice about this exchange was not that blame was pinned on someone, but rather that each person was willing to accept they messed up. This should not be an issue, and I think whether these 2 players do more difficult content or not, they would be able to get far with this kind of mentality. Being willing to admit you messed up, or you don't know what went wrong, makes it far easier for your group to help you learn what actually went wrong, so you can progress further faster. Beyond this exchange, not that much of particular note happened. Although, I suppose the fact that the main tank not once had their tank stance on, yet managed to hold aggro was impressive. I imagine they used Provoke a lot? I didn't notice until near the end of the duty when I noticed how close I was to taking aggro. Oh, and right at the very end of the fight, I actually thought this attack would be like a frontal cone or something, but it turned out to be a knockback, so whoops. Still won though. And finally, for duty 13, we landed in Kugane Ohashi, which is almost always quite a spectacle to behold, just because of the sheer chaos that always comes about. I think the best way to explain what happened here is to actually give you the play-by-play. You will probably understand as we go through. Here at the start with Yojimbo, everything goes just fine, no major issues here. But then Greg shows up, the man, the myth, the legend himself. And that is when things always start to get weird. The first thing that seems to cause problems throughout most of the fight is that Greg regularly swipes with frontal cleaves on the tank, and I'm not entirely sure if the tanks ever realized this. Next, it seems a lot of players in this group didn't quite understand the friendship triangles here. When you see these red downward pointing triangles, it means stand with friends, and in most situations, the easiest way to deal with it is to just stack with everyone, or anyone near you. And please, please don't start running away from people standing with you specifically. You just need one friend to resolve the mechanic successfully. I go on to explain how to do the mechanic, and when it happens a second time and people still run away, I just stand with the players I saw were not running away and spoke up again to cheekily let everyone know they still did it wrong. Now, our first death comes as a result of something else. A bit. This crisscross AoE combined with spread markers into donut AoEs can easily snipe some players, and the minimized healer got sniped as a result. In an extended battle, this can quickly become an issue since you get raised with low MP and reduced output effectiveness, so a healer would find it difficult to properly recover if their healing is actually necessary. The next dangerous mechanic that comes up is this one where Greg splits up in 2. I'm not actually sure you need to split them up, but the fact they cleave in front of them and things like that may make it safer to split them up. Awkwardly, the same healer drops again, which is sort of a classic with these kinds of duties with overwhelming mechanics, that you're disoriented as you get raised, so you get hit again. Due to the sheer amount of damage coming out, with only one healer alive, that chose to hard raise the dead healer, we're also severely behind on other healing, leading to a lot of players being dangerously low, which causes one of the dancers to go down. We somehow managed to recover while Greg wastes a lot of time doing his best impression of Susano. Continuing onward, he leads with a very unfair mechanic where he does circle AoEs essentially everywhere he himself is not situated, which snipes both healers and a dancer. Good thing I saved my swift cast, huh? And just as I raise the white mage, the chains mechanic comes up. This is another mechanic that is often misunderstood. The spiked tether means run away, and the further away you get, the less HP the chain will have. Which also means that the 2 tanks stuck next to Greg are essentially unsalvageable. The best we can do is save anyone else and hope we can raise a tank before it is too late. I immediately set to work attempting to res a tank, but similar to earlier in the video, I get interrupted just before I manage to get it done. Greg sets it all to 1 HP and starts preparing a raid-wide attack. We get our tanks up just as the healers go down again, and I again raise the white mage and immediately attempt to hard raise the other healer. No enrage means that stabilizing is more important. While I do this, I warn that healer limit break may be needed to recover, and then the tanks go down again, and I start to get more forceful with my recommendation. The white mage uses limit break, and what typically happens in these situations is that the healer limit break taking nearly 10 seconds to resolve properly means you're often stuck in whatever's coming up, causing you to die. Fortunately, with everyone alive, we do have a bit more space to res again. But then our scholar and the dancer goes down again to the tank, turning the boss so the frontal cleave cuts them both down. We have another set everyone to 1 HP and a raid wide cutting the scholar down again. Then, a combination of surprise AoEs and a raid wide takes out me, the paladin and the dragoon, so we're down to a tank, 2 healers and a DPS. The other dancer's raised, weird choice but okay. Then the paladin, and a bit later I get raised along with the dragoon. Everyone is alive again, never mind. More raises are sent out as the white mage goes down again, and now we're once again all alive. I want to highlight that we have limit break 2 again. Remember when we used healer limit break? Feels like days ago. And here at the end, the stack triangles finally sort of got resolved right. Mostly. What an improvement from the start. And ranged limit break goes out, allowing us to finish the fight. I want to direct your attention to the fact this duty took nearly 11 minutes, and it was a constant fight. Yet, not a single wipe. What an insane way to end the set, but this is what happens when a boss is difficult enough without having a hard enrage. You just keep trying to recover over and over. I think it was fun. On the one hand, I was a bit sad I wasn't a red mage so I could help more with healing and raises. On the other hand, summoner seemed to do well enough. Good thing I didn't actually choose black mage, huh? Let this Mentor Roulette session, though, stand as the reason why you shouldn't always use Swiftcast for the potential damage gain. I'm still quite surprised I only got 1 Mock Tome relevant duty on the first day of the event, though. Now, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to support me and my channel more directly, you can become a member like these wonderful people here. You can also alternatively support me through Ko-Fi, link in the description. You can also support the channel by letting the YouTube algorithm know by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing, sharing, and hitting the bell to get notified when next I post a video. Fun fact, the Hildebrand story has a total of 5 trials as of the end of Endwalker, with 3 of them being in A Realm Reborn. Battle on the Big Bridge, the Dragon's Neck, and Battle in the Big Keep, 1 being in Stormblood, Kugane Ohashi, and 1 being in Endwalker, the Gilded Araya. You have to do all of them, and the entire story, to fully upgrade the Endwalker relic weapons.